Minecraft has had a large number of updates throughout its lifespan, and Mojang has done a fairly good job at keeping the updates balanced and fitting with the game's overall theme. And sure, there are updates that are definitely less popular than others, like the Wild update, but that isn't to say the features that came along with the update were bad. Rather, they were just less interesting. There really aren't many updates that have gone on to affect the game in a negative manner, except for one. Now you can probably guess what this update is, but if you haven't already figured it out, this update introduced 3 major features that have caused wide controversy in the Minecraft community, changing the way people played the game forever. So what is the update, you may ask? Well, it's 1.9, the combat update, widely known for splitting the player base in two. Now earlier I mentioned 3 specific features that were introduced in this update that caused mixed feelings among players, being the new combat system, obviously, as I mean you can't really have a combat update without changes to combat. Then there was the elytra and the addition of Minecraft's most popular enchantment, mending. Why exactly is it that these features are so controversial? Well, before we discuss why, let's be clear on what controversy actually is. A controversy is when there's a clear disagreement between two parties, meaning that there are players who actually love these features and then there are players who didn't. If everybody was on the same side, these would be called Minecraft's most hated features, like the Phantom. But there were 2 sides to this argument. The main reason as to why these 3 features in specific caused so much controversy is because they each largely affected how the game was played in their own unique way. So let's break it down feature by feature. Let's start off with what 1.9 is most well known for, and by far the most controversial change in the game, being the new combat update. 1.9 introduced a complete overhaul to combat, changing the game's spam click sword fights to a timing-based combat system. They did this change in a few ways, most notably being the attack delay added between each hit. You can no longer just spam your left click, as now in order to do a proper amount of damage, you had to wait until your combat bar was cooled down. Otherwise, you'd end up dealing very little damage. On top of this, they also added a sweeping effect to swords, giving it a wider range in use. Before, swords only hit where your reticle was placed. The sweeping effect could also be largely improved by enchanting your sword with the new enchantment Sweeping Edge, which, if you couldn't guess already, improved the range of the sweeping effect. Outside of the sword, combat changes were also made to the axe. The axe was now more than just a tool to gather wood, as it would deal more damage than the sword, just at the cost of having a longer attack delay. The axe was also made to be a direct counter to the shield, which was also introduced in this update, breaking the shield's defense with a critical hit. Shields are another huge controversy of their own, as they made interaction with mobs far less intimidating, since you could now just block all of their attacks with no retribution. Mobs no longer inflicted fear when you had a shield, as you literally became invincible. Before all these combat changes were made, people would just spam click swords, and although it sounds simple, it actually had quite a large skill ceiling, and many servers still use modded versions of the game in order to have this on their combat servers. Many players disliked the combat changes so much they never updated the game to newer versions and remained playing on version 1.8 just to avoid the new combat system. This combat system was by no means bad, but it was introduced later in the game's lifespan, meaning it changed an already existing core aspect of the gameplay. These changes were made quite a while ago though, so most players have come to accept the changes and become accustomed to the combat system. I am, however, willing to bet that if this is how the game was at launch, many players would actually kind of enjoy the combat system. It's just the fact that it was added after there was already an existing staple combat system. Now, before I discuss the controversy that came along with the elytra, I'd like to ask you to do me a favor and hit that like button if you are enjoying the video whatsoever, and if you're really enjoying the video, subscribe so you never miss out on another video just like this one. You did it? Great, thanks. Back to the video. Now, 1.9's combat wasn't the only controversy introduced in this update, as the introduction of the elytra also brought a lot of mixed feelings from the community. On one hand, a lot of players liked the elytra as a fun feature used to fly around your world, and by far the best form of transportation in the game. It made traversing your world so much easier, and it made large building projects far more viable. Now, on the other hand, some players disliked the elytra, believing the elytra was too good as a form of transportation, making all other forms of transport such as horses and minecarts practically useless. This was only made worse when the elytra was combined with rockets, and honestly, this is 100% true. Once you obtain the elytra, there isn't really a need for other forms of transport besides maybe a nether highway. But the real question is if it's balanced out by the feature only being obtainable in the the end game of Minecraft? I would say yes and no. The Elytra is a good reward for making it to the end of the game's simple progression system. The reason I say no is most players nowadays rush through the progression system very fast, getting straight to the end within a day or two. This, however, isn't really the game's fault, as it's up to the player to decide the pace they want to play at. Outside of being an incredibly powerful form of transportation, some players believe the Elytra took away from the exploration aspect of your world, along with making it more difficult to build a real connection to your world. There's a vastly different feel of walking through your world on foot that allows you to really take your world in, get to know the terrain and its landmarks, while when flying, these things may go unnoticed as you just zoom over it without a second glance. The Elytra is a feature that, depending on who you are, could be one of the best or worst introductions made to the game. I personally am a huge fan of the Elytra, as without it, making large builds would be such a pain. Even with scaffolding, it's just a much better experience with an Elytra. I do also understand the complaints about the Elytra, but personally, it hasn't negatively affected me. Now that we've discussed both the combat changes and the Elytra, that leaves us with Minecraft's most popular enchantment, Mending. Also introduced in 1.9, Mending is an enchantment considered overpowered by a large number of players, as enchanting your tool or armor with Mending makes it practically invincible. Once Mending has been applied to your tool, all you need to do to replenish its health is collect XP. This is a feature that is without a doubt very powerful, but is it really overpowered? Well, that's kinda up to you to decide, but by having your tools infinitely replenishable, you'll never have to go out and gather the materials to make them again, giving the player less of an incentive to go mining. There are still plenty of reasons for you to go mining to collect ore for uses outside of your tools, but those reasons are mostly for builders. If your focus is beating the game and maxing out your gear, there wasn't gonna be a need for you to go mining again anyways, as once you've maxed out your gear and beaten the dragon, you don't actually have anything left to achieve. If you do continue to play after maxing out your gear, do you really want to have to go make a replacement after putting in all the effort to max out your current item with enchantments? Me personally, not really, as I don't want to have to stop mid-project every time my tool breaks to go collect the resources to create and fully enchant another. Mending is definitely powerful, but I think it's honestly necessary to enjoy the late game of Minecraft to the fullest when your focus is on building and expanding your world, as you've already completed everything there is to the core progression system. The only thing making Mending overpowered could be how it's obtained. Mending is somewhat hard to obtain, which can balance it out a bit, but most players have learned to exploit the villager trading system, where they can continuously reset a librarian's trades until they get the enchantment they want, which in this case would be Mending. This task is not hard whatsoever, it's just a bit tedious. Once they get the enchantment they want though, they can purchase as many as they like. This isn't really a problem with Mending, this is more just a problem with the trading system in general. Like any controversy, some players may love this, some may hate it, but I think it's a good idea to make Mending a bit harder to obtain by putting it behind some form of structure or difficult task, alongside removing it from village trading. This could be a good fix, but taking it away from villagers would create a controversy of its own, as the players who like obtaining Mending from villagers would be very upset with this change. 1.9 is widely known for Minecraft's most controversial updates, and it's for a fair reason. This update introduced 3 of the most game-changing features all at once. The Elytra and the Mending enchantment are 2 incredibly powerful features that, once obtained, change how you play the game for the rest of your playthrough, as unless you die, you'll never be without them again. And 1.9's combat changed the game the most, as it affects you throughout the entire playthrough. You use this combat from start to finish. I think the combat changes were actually necessary for the future of the game, as it allows for more weapons and variety to be introduced. I mean, without the combat changes, we likely never would have been able to get the mace and the trident, as they wouldn't work well with the spam click system. I know Bedrock is currently still on a spam click system, but honestly, I just don't think it works as well. That is, however, just my opinion. These features are 3 staple parts of current day Minecraft, and discussions are still held about whether they should have ever been introduced in the first place. The large controversy this update caused is likely the main factor that's keeping Mojang from making any major changes to the core gameplay loop, as they have to be very careful they don't introduce something that throws off the balance of the game. But hey, what do you guys think about the changes made in 1.9? Do you think the Elytra and Mending were overall positive or negative additions to the game? I'd love to continue this discussion, so leave any thoughts you have in the comments down below. Now, if you did enjoy this video, a like is greatly appreciated and helps this video get out to others. And if you really enjoyed the video, subscribing means a lot, and it also ensures you never miss out on another video just like this one. That's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.